Part 1. The Wedding and the Warning. As the guests applauded, the bride, who had just officially become my daughter-in-law, approached me with a sweet smile and whispered, "Mr. Horace, we've discussed this. After the honeymoon, you'll move in with Grandma, okay? This house is a better fit for a young couple like us." "No," I replied. The next second, her open palm struck my cheek right in the middle of the wedding reception hall, in front of everyone. A life built on memories. My name is Horace Atmaja, I'm 65 years old, a retired mechanical engineer, and a widower. My wife, Mrs. Sari, passed away 6 years ago from sudden heart complications. Since then, I've lived alone in the 2-story house my family owned in Lembang, a cool, hilly area outside Bandung, Indonesia. The house is full of memories. Every corner holds a trace of my wife and my only son, Rendra. Rendra is 31 now, an ITB Bandung Institute of Technology graduate who works as a freelance programmer out of Jakarta. He rarely comes home but sends money monthly and video calls occasionally. Our relationship was fine, or at least that's what I thought until 3 months ago. 3 months before that disastrous wedding, Rendra unexpectedly came home to Bandung. He brought a young woman with him named Kinanti. "Dad, this is Kinanti. We're clicking," he said with a wide smile I hadn't seen often since his mother passed. According to Rendra, they met at a creative community event in Jakarta. Kinanti worked as a server at a small bar near the Pasteur area, claiming it was temporary until she could start her own coffee shop business. What shocked me was Rendra's decision to get married after only dating for 2.5 months. His reason was simple: "You always told me not to delay when you're sure, Dad." I had said that once, but certainly not in this context. The unease begins. My first impression of Kinanti wasn't entirely positive. She was friendly, and her smile was lovely, but there was something in her eyes that made me uneasy. They were sharp, like she was assessing the room, calculating the value of every item. She asked too many questions about the house's condition. "Is that upstairs room empty, Dad?" she asked, glancing toward the second floor. "Do you still get a pension from your old company?" she questioned later during dinner. "This classic painting looks expensive, doesn't it?" she commented, touching a framed photo on the wall. Whenever I spoke, she'd often interrupt and steer the conversation toward financial or material topics. I tried to give Rendra subtle signals, but he seemed too happy to notice. That evening, after she went to bed early, I tried to speak with Rendra privately. "Son, don't rush into this. We don't know her family, we don't know her background well enough," I cautioned. "Be careful." Rendra's face immediately darkened. "What do you mean by that, Dad? She's a good person. She just comes from a simple family." I tried to keep my voice steady. "That's not it, Rendra. I'm just saying marriage is a huge decision. Don't end up regretting it." But Rendra wouldn't listen. His voice started to rise. "You've been lonely since Mom died, and now you can't stand to see me happy." His words hit me like a sledgehammer. Rendra had never spoken to me like that before. I fell silent, unsure how to respond. That night, Rendra left, slamming the door behind him. Silence and a plan. For the next week, he didn't answer my calls. Every incoming call went to voicemail, every text was read but ignored. 2 weeks later, Rendra sent a short message via WhatsApp. "Dad, the wedding is still happening. Kinanti's family is okay with me. If you object, you don't need to come to the official ceremony, just the reception." I stared at the phone screen for a long time, rereading the message. My heart ached, but I chose silence. I didn't reply, didn't call. In my silence, something began to stir. I started forming a plan. The wedding day finally arrived. The reception was held at the local community hall Balai RW in the Ujung Berung area of East Bandung. About 80 guests attended, mostly family and neighbors. Soft krongkong music played gently, and a magnificent rice cone tumpeng stood in the center of the room. The atmosphere should have been warm and grateful, but I felt like I was walking on thin ice. Kinanti wore a silver brocade gown with modern lace. Her hair was neatly styled. Some guests offered praise, "The bride is so beautiful." But my eyes couldn't leave the way she looked around. Her gaze constantly swept the room, pausing briefly at every corner, as if measuring something. Occasionally, she chatted with guests, and I heard phrases that tightened my chest. "Your father's house is too big for one person, isn't it?" she said to one of my neighbors. She even joked with Rendra's aunt. We plan to renovate the kitchen and the back room later, to make it more suitable for a young family. I stood in a corner, watching everything with a heavy heart. Rendra looked tired but tried to smile. He had no idea what I was preparing. The slap. After the official ceremony and family photos were done, guests began to eat. The music continued, people laughed and talked. Amidst the crowd, Kinanti approached me with a calm stride. Her smile was sweet, but I already knew what was behind it. "Dad, I know this house holds many memories," she said in a soft voice, as if speaking to an elder who needed delicate handling. "But it's a shame for you to live there alone. We've talked, and after the honeymoon, maybe you can stay with Aunt Rukmi, okay? We need to reorganize the house." She even touched my arm, pretending it was all for my own good. I stared at her, unblinking. "This house is not part of the dowry," I said in a low but firm voice. Her smile faltered for a moment, replaced by a flash in her eyes. She let out a small, forced laugh. "You're joking, right? We're just thinking about your well-being." I didn't answer, just kept staring. And suddenly, without warning, her palm swung and landed hard on my cheek. The sound of the slap broke the momentary silence in the room. A few nearby guests immediately turned their heads. The music was still playing, but conversations started to cease one by one. People began to look at us. Kinanti instantly pretended to cry. She covered her face with her hands. "I only want the best for this family," she sobbed, loud enough for those nearby to hear. My cheek burned, but not from the physical pain. My hands trembled, not from the slap, but from the long-suppressed rage. Rendra wasn't nearby, he was greeting other guests in the back. I stood there, the center of attention, feeling a mixture of shame and indescribable anger. But one thing kept me calm. I had prepared something. Without a word, I turned and walked toward the community hall's kitchen. My steps were slow but steady. In the empty kitchen, I pulled my phone from my pocket. My finger trembled as I dialed a number I hadn't called in the last 10 years. The line rang once, twice. Then a voice on the other end answered. "Hello." I took a long breath. "Nugroho, it's Horace. I need your help. Now." I knew that dealing with a woman like Kinanti couldn't be done just with harsh words. I needed an ally. So, I contacted a man whose debt to me hadn't been fully repaid since 1997. An old debt called in. Mr. Nugroho was an old friend of mine from the Army Corps of Engineers Dinas Teknik Sipil TNI. We'd worked together on several infrastructure projects during the New Order era. Now, he was retired and ran a small CCTV installation business in Simahi. 20 years ago, I'd saved him from an internal project issue that nearly destroyed his career. Since then, he'd always insisted that debt of gratitude was still owed. When I called him that evening from the reception kitchen, his voice instantly became serious the moment he heard my tone. "Horace, what's wrong? You sound tense." I explained the situation briefly. "My new daughter-in-law is not a good person. I suspect she has many secrets, and I need concrete evidence before it's too late." Mr. Nugroho was silent for a moment, then answered decisively. "We'll use clean, legal, and undeniable methods. I'll be at your house tomorrow morning." The next day, Mr. Nugroho arrived carrying a black backpack. We sat in the living room, and he took out some equipment. "This is a small camera that can be hidden in a bag or any object. This is an automatic voice recorder that activates if there's a conversation within a 10-foot radius. And this," he showed me an old cell phone, "is a simple tracking app, not illegal hacking, just public analytics from legal, safe social media." I nodded. "What do I need to do?" Mr. Nugroho gave a slight smile. "You don't need to do anything. I'll arrange everything, but you have to trust the process." He then asked about Kinanti's habits, her workplace, her hours. I told him everything I knew. The bar near Pasteur, afternoon to evening shifts, often comes home late. Mr. Nugroho then suggested one more thing. "We need a field operative. Someone who won't be suspected, who can hang around her workplace without looking suspicious." I immediately thought of Parman, my regular motorcycle taxi ojek driver, who often delivered things to my house. Parman was quick, loyal, and most importantly, he knew all the back alleys in Bandung. He was 42 and had been a driver for over a decade. That afternoon, I called Parman to the house. I carefully explained the situation, not too many details, but enough for him to understand. Man, I need help. I'll pay you per shift. Just hang out in front of the Pasteur bar where my daughter-in-law works. Take pictures of anyone who picks her up, what time, what they're driving, and their body language. Don't get caught. Parman nodded without asking many questions. Consider it done, Mr. Horace. I understand. The trail of evidence. On the second day of surveillance, Parman sent the first photo. A large man in a black t-shirt was waiting for Kinanti outside the bar. At 11 p.m., they walked out together. The man hugged Kinanti and kissed her on the forehead before they got on his motorcycle. I stared at the photo for a long time. A mix of sadness and anger churned in my heart. Rendra hadn't even finished his honeymoon, but his wife was meeting another man with such intimacy. On the fourth day, a different man appeared. Tall, thin, with somewhat long hair. He came carrying flowers, gave them to Kinanti inside the bar, and then they left together in a white sedan. Parman noted the license plate, D184KT. Mr. Nugroho immediately tracked it down through his connections. The car was registered to Adani Prasetto, address in the Dago area. On the sixth day, Kinanti was seen wearing different clothes than usual, not her work uniform but a short red dress. She got into the same man's car, and they headed toward the Sihampelas area. Parman followed from a distance on his motorcycle, taking several pictures as they sat in a cafe. Their gestures were too familiar for mere friends. All photos and notes went into a digital folder neatly organized by Mr. Nugroho. He built a timeline, noted patterns, and began compiling a profile. Horace, this isn't just an ordinary affair, he said one afternoon, showing me his laptop screen. It's structured. Look, she uses a different bag when she meets a certain man. The same wristwatch she wears with Rendra, she also wears with the other men. This is high-level manipulation. I felt nauseous hearing it. Parman had also overheard Kinanti talking on the phone while he waited outside the bar. Her voice was quiet but captured. Don't drive me all the way home, my neighbors might get suspicious. This meant she was hiding someone from someone else, a clear pattern of manipulation. Mr. Nugroho continued to compile data. From day 1 to day 12, the pattern started to emerge. Monday to Wednesday, the tall, thin man, whom we later identified as Donnie. Thursday to Friday, the large man, who turned out to be named Did It. Saturday and Sunday, only with Rendra. 3 different schedules for 3 different men. I began storing all the evidence in one large folder. There were already more than 25 photos. Mr. Nugroho then suggested tracing Kinanti's social media. A person like her must have a digital footprint. Let's start with her public accounts. The hidden life. We started with Instagram. Her main account was at kinanti.rendra, full of wedding photos and sweet posts about happiness with Rendra. But Mr. Nugroho didn't stop there. He used simple methods to track down other linked accounts, and we found it. There was one hidden account, at Kinantafreebird22. The account was locked, but the followers and following list showed names we didn't recognize. Mr. Nugroho managed to access it through a dummy account. The contents were shocking. Photos of Kinanti with both Did It and Donnie, each with different romantic captions. Being with you is home, for a photo with Did It. You're the best thing in my life, for a photo with Donnie. There wasn't a single photo of Rendra on that account. There was also a Facebook account under her maiden name, Kinanti Lastari. There were even more photos with the 2 men. One special album titled My Journey contained pictures of her trip with Donnie to Pangandaran. The date of the photos. 2 weeks before her wedding to Rendra. I stared at the screen with mixed emotions. This was no longer just suspicion, it was a naked fact. That evening, I sat alone in the living room after Mr. Nugroho left. On a small altar was a photo of Bu Sari. I lit incense, gazing at my wife's gentle, smiling face in the wooden frame. Forgive me, sorry, I whispered quietly. I have to save our son my own way. I know this isn't easy, but I have no other choice. The final piece. A few days later, Mr. Nugroho called with a serious tone. Horace, you have to see this. I drove straight to his house. On his laptop screen was a new recording from Parman. A short video taken from a distance. Kinanti was at a jewelry store in the Dago area with Donnie. They were trying on rings. Kinanti laughed, holding up her hand, showing a white gold ring on her ring finger. Donnie hugged her from behind, kissing the top of her head. I felt the blood rush to my head. When was this? I asked. Mr. Nugroho checked the timestamp. Night of the 15th, 3 days ago. I counted backward. 3 days ago, Rendra had called me, saying he was busy with freelance work and Kinanti was out with friends. It turned out with friends meant trying on engagement rings with another man. We have to go deeper, said Mr. Nugroho. I'll try to track her financial transactions if possible. Legally, through public records. I nodded. I was too far in to back out now. I drove home that night with a heavy heart. In the car, I watched the busy streets of Bandung. The city lights twinkled. People hurried by. Life went on. But my life felt stopped, waiting for the inevitable explosion. Part 2, The Double Life Exposed. The recording from night 15 became the turning point in our investigation. Kinanti was clearly visible trying on the white gold ring with the man in the gray shirt at a small jewelry shop in Dago. The location wasn't far from the cafe where they were often seen together. The man was Donnie, who had appeared several times in Parman's footage. What cemented my certainty that this wasn't a coincidence was a tiny detail Mr. Nugroho caught on the video. Kinanti mentioned a size 7.5 when trying on the ring. The exact same size she wore when trying on rings with Rendra last week at home, Mr. Nugroho said, shaking his head. She didn't even bother to change the size. This woman is either incredibly confident or incredibly careless. I'm not sure which is more dangerous. I sat in silence, my jaw clenched, staring at the screen. Every second of that video felt like a fresh blow to my chest. Unmasking the victims. Mr. Nugroho then dug deeper into the identities of the two men. He used various legal means, from tracking license plates via his contacts in the police to analyzing social media accounts and tracing Kinanti's public transaction history. The process took nearly a week, but the results were stunning. Didit, the large man first caught on camera, was 36. He worked as a senior technician at Rukun Jaya Garage in the Subaru area. From his fairly active Facebook account, it was clear he'd been in a relationship with Kinanti for a year and a half. There were dozens of photos of them together, eating at roadside stalls, traveling to Tangkuban Perahu, a popular volcano site, and intimate photos in his rented room. The captions were deeply romantic. Being with you is home, sweetheart. My life is complete because of you. Kinanti even replied in the comments with terms of endearment like, my dearest babe, and, Didit is my love. They looked like a very serious couple. More shockingly, from photos posted by Didit's friends, Kinanti frequently stayed over at his place. One photo showed Kinanti cooking in the tiny kitchen with a caption from Didit, my dream wife cooking my favorite meal. That photo was posted 2 months before Kinanti married Rendra. I felt sick reading it. Donnie, the tall, thin man, was 30. He worked as a manager at a sneaker store called My Kicks in the Braga area. His Instagram was neat and aesthetic, showing him to be a modern guy who enjoyed travel and photography. Intriguingly, to Donnie, Kinanti introduced herself with a different identity. In several of Danny's Instagram stories, which we screenshotted before they disappeared, Kinanti was referred to as a sweet-hearted kindergarten teacher. A complete lie, as she worked at a bar. Donnie seemed very serious about her, often gifting her branded shoes from his store. He even posted a photo of a couple's pair with the caption, for us to step forward together into the future. The upload date, 1 week before Kinanti's wedding to Rendra. I can't imagine how someone can be so mentally warped to do all of this without any remorse, I mumbled. The structured deception. With the identities of the two men revealed, Mr. Nugroho began mapping out the complete fraud pattern. Horace, this isn't amateur cheating, he said, pointing to a diagram on his laptop. This is meticulously structured. Look at this. He showed me 3 different phone numbers Kinanti used. 3 different SIM cards. 3 different WhatsApp accounts. 1 for Rendra, 1 for Didit, and 1 for Donnie. Each account had a different profile picture, a different bio, and even slightly varied language style. She also has 3 Instagram accounts, Mr. Nugroho continued. The main one for Rendra and the family. The second for Didit and his friends from Subaru. The third for Donnie and his modern Braga crowd. Each Account only follows people close to the respective men. No overlap. This was planned with extreme care. Even Rendra, her husband, was unaware of Kinanti's main Facebook account, which was filled with romantic photos with Didit and Donnie. That account still used her maiden name and was completely disconnected from the Instagram Rendra knew. She is living 3 parallel lives simultaneously, Mr. Nugroho stated with disbelief. And she succeeded. At least until now. Financial motive. The financial motive began to surface when we successfully traced several of Kinanti's transactions through the digital breadcrumbs she left behind. Screenshots of conversations from one of her poorly secured private accounts showed Kinanti using money from the joint savings account with Rendra for various expenses she never mentioned. There was a transfer to book a fictional engagement venue with Donnie at a fancy restaurant in Dago. There was a payment for the installment loan on Didit's Honda scooter, which had broken down and needed major repairs. There were also routine transfers to an account named Tia Listari, which Mr. Nugroho confirmed was Kinanti's own alias account. She's transferring money from the joint account into her private one, Mr. Nugroho explained. This is clear marital embezzlement. It's legal grounds for a lawsuit if you wanted to pursue it. I recalled a phone conversation with Rendra a few weeks prior. He had complained, "Dad, our savings suddenly dropped quite a bit," but Kinanti said it was a down payment for extra reception catering. That money was actually being used for Kinanti's life with other men. The amount was significant. In the last 2 months alone, there were outgoing transactions from Rendra and Kinanti's joint account totaling nearly $1,000 USD, around Rp 15 million, with no proof of household use. Whenever Rendra asked, Kinanti always had a smooth excuse: for house preparations later, for monthly shopping, emergency savings. All plausible reasons, but unverifiable. The smoking gun. Mr. Nugroho also found one final, powerful piece of evidence. Parman managed to infiltrate the bar where Kinanti worked during a night shift. He pretended to be a regular customer, sitting in a corner drinking coffee and placing a small voice recorder beneath a chair near the cashier where Kinanti often stood. The recording captured Kinanti's phone conversation with someone, presumably Donnie. Her voice was quiet, but clearly audible. Rendra is so easy to play. The money just flows, and he never asks for details. He believes whatever I tell him. Hearing that recording, I wanted to smash something. My hands clenched until my knuckles turned white. But I knew anger wouldn't solve anything. I needed a cool head. Mr. Nugroho edited the recording, isolating the clear parts, and placed it into the digital evidence file. This is strong enough to demonstrate her intent and true character, he concluded. After 3 weeks of investigation, we had compiled all the evidence into one main, meticulously organized file. Mr. Nugroho structured it like a professional investigation report: a chronology of her relationships, complete transaction proofs, dozens of photos of Kinanti with Didit and Donnie, and an analysis of the legal and moral risks. This is practically a court dossier, Mr. Nugroho said, printing the 59-page document. No one can refute this, not even the best lawyer. I stared at the stack of papers with mixed feelings. On one hand, I was relieved to have such powerful evidence. On the other, I was sad that I had to go this far just to protect my own son. The looming date. To strengthen the evidence, I also contacted an additional witness, Mrs. Nana, a former colleague of Bu Sari who now lived in Garut. I told her the situation, and Mrs. Nana immediately remembered something. "Horace, hold on. Is this Kinanti the one who used to live in the boarding house near my place about 3 years ago? If so, I know her. She was a problematic boarder." It was true. Kinanti had lived in the Garut area before moving to Bandung. According to Mrs. Nana, Kinanti was almost evicted for months of unpaid rent and alleged financial manipulation. She had borrowed money from several other boarders with various excuses but never paid it back. "She's a smooth talker, Horace." Everyone initially believed her, but eventually, her lies caught up, Mrs. Nana explained. This information was invaluable. I asked Mrs. Nana to write a sworn statement, which she agreed to. On night 20, I checked Parman's latest footage. One new photo made my breath stop. Kinanti was tightly hugging Donnie in front of a small cafe. Behind them, a small, handwritten whiteboard was visible. Engagement, June 10, 2023. That date was only 2 weeks away. 2 weeks after Kinanti was supposed to be on her honeymoon with Rendra. She had planned an engagement with another man. I stared at the photo until the phone screen blurred with unshed tears. Not from sadness, but from rage I could no longer suppress. I didn't need to expose Kinanti's deception crudely. I just needed to set the stage and let her own schemes unmask her in front of everyone. Part 3. Setting the stage. After finding the engagement photo of Kinanti and Donnie, I faced a massive decision. Mr. Nugroho suggested we expose everything immediately, perhaps by confronting Rendra with the evidence before it was too late. But I had a different idea. Nugroho, if we expose this now, she can twist the story. She's a smooth talker. She can claim all the photos are edited, all the recordings are fake. Rendra is still too in love to think clearly, I said, looking at the stack of evidence on the table. Mr. Nugroho frowned. So what's your plan? I paused, thinking through the most effective strategy. We let the wedding proceed. We don't disrupt the ceremony. But at the reception, at the peak of her happiness, in front of everyone who witnessed her marriage, that's when we open everything up. If she falls from the highest point, she won't be able to get back up. And everyone will be a witness to the truth, not just Rendra. Mr. Nugroho considered this, then nodded slowly. Risky, but effective. Okay, we'll go with your plan. The unbreakable defense. From that moment on, we prepared everything with extreme care. This was no longer just about gathering evidence, it was about orchestrating an undeniable public unveiling of the truth. The first step was to secure all documents and evidence in multiple formats. Mr. Nugroho printed the complete 59-page report, neatly bound like an official investigation. He also copied all digital files onto a special flash drive that I kept in the inner pocket of my jacket. Most importantly, he sent a complete copy to Rendra's backup email address, one only I knew the password to. His mother, Bu Sari, had created it years ago as a safety net if Rendra ever forgot his primary email password. If anything happens to us, this evidence will still reach Rendra eventually, Mr. Nugroho said, hitting the send button. I nodded, it was our last assurance. Besides the written documents, we prepared the multimedia evidence. Mr. Nugroho edited the audio clip of Kinanti saying, Rendra is so easy to play, the money just flows, into a very clear 15-second clip. He also arranged the timeline photos into a digital presentation that could be quickly displayed if needed. The bank transfer proofs were clearly photocopied with dates and amounts. The sworn statement from Mrs. Nana about Kinanti's past in Garut was notarized and ready to use. The decisive bait. We need two scenarios, Mr. Nugroho said. The primary scenario is luring Donnie and Didit to the reception. If they show up and meet, Kinanti's mask will rip off automatically. But if they don't, we have a contingency plan. We'll display the evidence directly via the reception projector. More dramatic, but also riskier because we'd look like the instigators. I preferred the first scenario. It's more organic, more irrefutable, and most importantly, I'm not the one directly attacking. Kinanti will fall because of her own trap. We began to devise a way to lure Donnie and Didit to the reception venue on time. The strategy was simple but effective. I would use a new, untraceable phone number to send an urgent message to both men, creating a need for them to rush over. For Didit, the message needed to appeal to his protective side as a real boyfriend. For Donnie, it needed to play on his romantic side as a fiancé-to-be. Mr. Nugroho helped draft the exact wording. For Didit, we sent the message, Bro, this is Kinanti's friend. Kinanti had an accident near the community hall reception in Ujung Bereng. She keeps asking for you and won't let others help her. Please come now. Simple, brief, and urgent enough to make Didit move without thinking. For Donnie, the message was slightly different. Mr. Donnie, this is from the hospital. Kinanti suddenly got very sick. She's asking to see you. She's at the community hall in Ujung Bereng. Please come immediately. It's quite serious. More formal, but still an emergency. We calculated the timing meticulously. The reception was scheduled to start at 3 p.m. The food service began around 4 p.m. We would send the messages at 4:18 p.m., when the event was well underway but not finished. From Subaru, where Didit lived, to Ujung Bereng takes about 15 minutes by motorcycle. From Braga, where Donnie worked, to Ujung Bereng takes about 20 minutes. If our calculations were correct, they would arrive almost simultaneously between 4:35 p.m. and 4:40 p.m., exactly when the party was busy and all the guests were still there. If they arrive together and see each other, there will surely be a confrontation, Mr. Nugroho stated. And once they ask the guests or people outside about Kinanti, their respective identities as her boyfriends will be revealed. Boom. The mask drops instantly. As a contingency, Parman was instructed to stand guard at the hall entrance with his motorcycle and phone. He had a backup number to send a second, more urgent message if needed. Mr. Nugroho would also be on standby nearby with a hidden camera to record everything that happened. The eve of destruction. The days leading up to the reception were the most stressful of my life. Every morning, I woke up with mixed feelings. On one hand, I was confident in our plan. On the other, I knew this would shatter Rendra. But I also knew it was better to be shattered now than to live a life forever, only to be destroyed worse later. Rendra called me 2 days before the reception. His voice was cheerful. "Dad, everything's ready. Kinanti is so excited. Thank you for coming, Dad, even though you objected at first." I could only reply, "Yes, son. I'll be there. I'll be there for you." After hanging up, I sat down, my hands trembling. Was I doing the right thing? The question echoed in my head. The night before the reception, I sat alone in the living room. The brown folder containing all the physical evidence was ready in my bag. The flash drive was in my jacket pocket. My phone was fully charged. I looked at Bu Sari's photo altar, softly lit by a small candle. "Sorry, tomorrow is the day everything changes. Forgive me if I'm wrong, but I can't let our son live in a lie." I whispered. The incense smoke curled upward, carrying my prayers. The hour of truth. On the morning of the reception, I woke up earlier than usual. I got dressed simply but neatly, a white shirt, black trousers, and a thin gray blazer. In the mirror, I saw an old man's weary face, but his eyes were full of determination. I took the evidence folder, put it in my small black bag. By 2 p.m., I arrived at the community hall. The place was decorated in silver and light purple. Guests began arriving one by one. I sat in a corner chair, observing everything without missing a single detail. Kinanti arrived around 2:45 p.m., glowing in her sparkling silver brocade dress. Her makeup was heavy, her lips bright red. She smiled widely, greeting the guests. I noticed her eyes quickly scanning the room, assessing and judging. Rendra looked tired but happy, busy greeting his friends. He had no idea the storm that was about to hit his life. At 4 p.m., the food service began. The mood was warm, people laughing and talking. This was the peak of the wedding happiness, and it was the perfect time to destroy it. At 4:18 p.m., I nodded to Mr. Nugroho, who was standing near the door. He took out his phone and started typing the messages. I knew he was sending them to Didit and Donnie. My heart pounded. My hand, holding the evidence folder, was slightly sweaty. This was the moment of truth. There was no turning back. I sat calmly, even though a drum seemed to be beating continuously in my chest. I remembered Bu Sari's face, her smile, her advice. "Horace, protecting families sometimes requires painful measures, but it must still be done." I took a deep breath, looking at Rendra, who was laughing with his friends. "Forgive me, son. This is all for your own good." At 4:37 p.m., I heard the sound of a motorcycle screeching to a stop in front of the hall. Then a second one followed seconds later. Parman, standing guard at the gate, immediately texted my phone, "Sir, 2 bikes just arrived. One big guy, one tall guy. They got off in a rush." I felt the adrenaline surge through my body. They had come. Didit and Donnie had arrived. A few seconds later, a commotion started outside. Panicked male voices asked, "Where is Kinanti? Where is she?" Then another voice with the same urgency, "Kinanti, where are you?" "I'm her fiancé." "What happened to her?" A moment of silence, followed by a confused voice, "Wait, I'm her boyfriend." "You're her boyfriend too." Guests near the entrance turned around, curious about the disturbance. From inside the hall, I stood up slowly, clutching the folder, and looked toward the door with a cold smile, whispering to myself, "Now, let them see for themselves the woman they love." Part 4. The bombshell at the altar. "Why are there 2 other men at my wife's wedding?" Rendra's voice trembled. The room, moments ago filled with laughter, instantly fell into a heavy, terrifying silence. No one moved. All eyes were fixed on Kinanti, whose face had abruptly gone corpse white. The commotion outside intensified. I could hear Didit's voice rising in panic. I'm her boyfriend. We've been together for a year and a half. How can you be her boyfriend too? Donnie shot back just as loudly. We just got engaged last month. She told me she was going to marry me. Who are you? Curious guests started pouring out of the hall to see what was happening. The gentle traditional Indonesian music kronkong playing inside suddenly sounded jarring amid the rising tension. The sound system operator looked confused, unsure whether to cut the music or let it play. Kinanti, who was standing near the buffet table, froze. The hand holding her plate trembled. Her face, which had been beaming with a sweet smile, was now pale, eyes wide with disbelief at what she was hearing. What is this? Asked one of Rendra's aunts loudly. Why is there a fuss outside? Mr. Darmo, my neighbor, had already walked out to check. He returned moments later, his face baffled, and motioned for other men to join him. There are 2 men out there claiming to be her boyfriends. Looks like trouble. Rendra, sitting next to Kinanti on the ceremonial chairs, instantly stood up. His expression shifted from confusion to grave concern. Her boyfriends. What does that mean? He looked at Kinanti, demanding an answer. Kinanti quickly shook her head, forcing a weak smile. Honey, I don't know who they are. They must have the wrong person. But Rendra was already heading for the door. Kinanti tried to grab his arm. Rendra, wait, don't go out there. But he pulled away and kept walking. Kinanti had no choice but to follow. I remained in my position, gripping the brown folder tightly, waiting for the perfect moment. The face-to-face collision. Outside the hall, the scene was dramatic. Didit and Donnie stood facing each other, both confused and highly suspicious. Didit wore a black mechanic's jacket, his face sweaty, his hair messy, looking like he'd jumped onto his motorcycle straight out of bed. Donnie wore a neat light blue shirt, chinos, and branded casual shoes, carrying a small box containing medicine and tissues, as if prepared to help a sick person. As Kinanti and Rendra walked out, both men immediately turned. Their expressions went from anxious to relieved, then back to utterly confused when they saw Kinanti in a bridal gown. Kinanti, why are you wearing a dress like that? Aren't you sick? Donnie asked, his forehead creased. Didit interjected, sweetheart, I got a message saying you were in an accident, but you're having a party. Kinanti was speechless. Her mouth was open, but no words came out. Her face grew paler. Her hands, clutching the edge of her wedding gown, were shaking violently. Rendra stood beside her, staring in turn at Kinanti, Didit, and Donnie, his gaze hardening with suppressed anger. Who are you? Rendra asked, trying to keep his voice calm. Didit answered first. I'm Didit, Kinanti's boyfriend. We've been together for a year and a half. She stays at my place all the time. Donnie immediately cut in. Wait, boyfriend. We just got engaged last month. We were planning our wedding next month. Who are you? The 2 men looked at each other with disbelief. Then their focus slowly shifted back to Kinanti, who stood motionless. Rendra took a step back, as if slapped by a reality too heavy to comprehend. His voice trembled as he asked, Kinanti, what is the meaning of this? Kinanti tried to reach for Rendra's hand, but he pulled away. Honey, they're lying. I don't know them. This has to be a misunderstanding. But Didit had already pulled out his phone. He opened his photo gallery and displayed dozens of photos of himself with Kinanti, photos in his apartment, on trips, hugging by his motorcycle. What do you call this? A misunderstanding. These are all our pictures. This was 2 days ago. Kinanti slept at my place. He shouted in frustration. Donnie wouldn't be outdone. He pulled out his phone, too, showing similar photos. And these are pictures of us at the jewelry store last week. We were picking out engagement rings. This is us at the beach. You said we would start a life together. The 2 phones were held high, and several guests who had crowded around could clearly see the images. The atmosphere grew incredibly tense. Whispers broke out among the guests. Oh my God, she had 3 boyfriends at once. Poor Mr. Horace's son. Kinanti started screaming, her voice cracking with panic. It's a frame-up. They're just friends. The photos are manipulated. But Didit was too angry to be silenced. He stepped forward, his eyes filled. with deep disappointment and rage. Manipulation. You called me your dearest love. You said we'd get married next year. You slept at my place every Thursday and Friday. Was all that manipulation? His voice was a raw mixture of anger and heartbreak. Donnie also stepped forward, his face red with emotion. You told me you were a kindergarten teacher. You said we were going to build a life together. What were those rings for? Just decoration. He pointed a trembling finger at Kinanti. The undeniable proof. Then, in a moment that sent the situation spiraling, Didit slapped Kinanti hard. The sound echoed in the sudden silence. Kinanti staggered, her cheek instantly turning red. Several female guests shrieked in shock. You play with people's feelings. Didit yelled hoarsely. Donnie also lunged forward, but was restrained by several male guests who rushed to de-escalate the situation. Rendra stood frozen, his face empty, like a man who had just lost his soul. His eyes were watering, his fists clenched until his knuckles were white. He looked at Kinanti, who was now weeping, though her tears sounded utterly fake to everyone present. Rendra, trust me, they're just trying to ruin us. She sobbed, trying to reach for his hand again. But Rendra stepped back, slowly shaking his head. Don't touch me. His voice was cold, unlike his usual gentle, patient self. Kinanti continued to wail louder, trying to garner sympathy. This is all your father's fault. He set this all up. He couldn't stand to see us happy. And that was my cue. I had been standing calmly at the edge, observing everything. Now it was my turn to speak. I walked out of the hall, the brown folder in my hand. My steps were slow but deliberate. All eyes turned to me. The guests parted as I walked through them. I stopped in the middle of the crowd, a few feet from Kinanti. My voice was calm but loud enough for everyone to hear. I didn't come for revenge. I came to open my son's eyes. I held the brown folder high. From day 3 to day 32, this is what my daughter-in-law has been doing with 2 other men. Total silence. Even the music inside the hall had been cut by the operator, who realized the situation was beyond repair. I opened the folder slowly, pulling out the stacks of papers and photos. I placed 7 photos of Kinanti with Didit on a nearby guest table. They clearly showed their intimacy. Next, I placed 5 photos of Kinanti with Donnie. This is proof of money transferred from Rendra and Kinanti's joint account to an account named Tia Listari, which we investigated and found to be Kinanti's personal alias account. I continued, showing a printout of bank transfers for a significant amount, $1,000 USD in the last 2 months. Rendra was told this money was for household preparations. In reality, it was used to book an engagement venue with Donnie, pay for Didit's scooter repairs, and transfer to Kinanti's private account. The murmuring grew louder. Several older women shook their heads in disbelief. Mr. Darmo looked at me, his eyes teary, sharing my pain. This is the screenshot of conversations from the 3 different WhatsApp accounts Kinanti used for 3 different men, 3 different phone numbers, 3 parallel lives lived simultaneously. I took out my phone, turned on the speaker, and played the audio recording of Kinanti saying, Rendra is so easy to play. The money just flows, and he never asks for details. He believes whatever I tell him. The voice echoed loudly in the quiet. Kinanti immediately shrieked, that's not my voice. It's edited. But I wasn't finished. I pulled out a notarized letter. This is a sworn statement from Mrs. Nana, Kinanti's former neighbor in Garut. She states Kinanti was nearly evicted from her boarding house for months of unpaid rent and manipulated several other boarders into loaning her money that was never repaid. This is not the first time Kinanti has committed fraud. Kinanti collapsed onto the ground. Her gown, once pristine, was now dirty with courtyard dust. She still tried to defend herself, screaming that this was all a setup, that I wanted to separate them. But no one believed her anymore. Even Rendra, who had loved her so deeply, now only stared at her with a blank expression. Donnie and Didit were also silent. They realized they weren't the only victims, they had been manipulated, too. Didit sat on the curb, burying his head in his hands. Donnie threw the box of medicine he was holding to the ground in frustration. I gave her everything, he mumbled softly. I turned to face all the guests now gathered in the courtyard. I am ashamed that a family event has turned into a scandal. But it is better for the shame to be exposed now than to live in a lie forever. My voice was steady, even though my heart was broken. I looked at Rendra, who stood like a statue. Tears began to stream down his face, though he made no sound. I stepped closer to him. "I am not proud of doing this, son," I said quietly, loud enough only for him to hear. "But I do not regret it, because I will not let my son live a lie." Rendra didn't reply. He only looked at me with empty eyes. Then, slowly, he nodded. In the ensuing silence, Rendra took off his wedding ring. The simple gold band he had only worn for a few hours. He placed it on the nearest table, right next to the stack of photographic evidence I had presented. "We're done," he said, his voice hoarse. "I don't know who you are." Then he turned and walked away from the courtyard, past the guests who respectfully made way for him with pitying glances. Kinanti tried to run after him, but she tripped over the hem of her own gown and fell again. No one helped her up. Everyone just stared with a mixture of pity and disgust. The music, which had been off, was now completely silenced. The remaining silence was filled only by Kinanti's now pathetic sobs, though no one offered any sympathy. My neighbors came over and patted my shoulder, offering silent support. Mr. Darmo looked at me, his eyes wet. "Horace, you did the right thing. Never doubt it." That night at home, Rendra locked himself in his room. I could hear his muffled sobs from outside, but I didn't knock. I knew he needed time alone. I sat in the living room, looking at Bihusari's photo with mixed feelings. What I had done was right, but why did my heart feel so incredibly heavy? At 1:15 a.m., Rendra's bedroom door opened. He emerged with puffy eyes, a pale face, and a weary step. He walked to my room and knocked softly. I opened the door, and there stood my son, completely devastated. He didn't say much. He only managed one sentence, his voice barely a whisper: "Dad, please don't leave me." Part 5. The Aftermath and a New Beginning. For 3 days following the incident, Rendra couldn't get out of bed. The sight of Kinanti sitting broken on the party floor had spread like wildfire, shared in neighborhood WhatsApp groups and local gossip forums, the equivalent of a small-town TMZ. The first morning after the reception, I woke up not with relief or pride, but a vast emptiness. I made a simple breakfast, chicken congee from yesterday's leftover ingredients, but Rendra didn't leave his room. I knocked softly. "Son, come eat." No answer, just a heavy silence. I let him be. I knew he needed to process everything, but seeing my son like that was agonizing. I sat in the living room, my phone buzzing with messages from neighbors, distant relatives, and even long-lost friends. Most offered support, but some were just curious for details. I was most touched by a text from Ustaz Faisal, the local mosque elder. "Mr. Horace, may God strengthen you and Rendra. We stand with you. Such behavior cannot be tolerated. You did the right thing." That message brought tears to my eyes. At least people understood why I had to take such extreme action. The slow road to recovery. By the 3rd day, I couldn't bear it anymore. I opened his bedroom door with the spare key. Inside, Rendra was curled up in bed like a child, blankets covering most of his body. The room was dark, the curtains tightly drawn. I sat on the edge of the bed and placed my hand on his shoulder. "Son, I know this hurts, but life has to go on." Rendra didn't answer, but I felt his shoulder shake. He was crying again. I let him mourn, silently allowing him to release the pent-up sadness. After a few minutes, his weeping subsided. He slowly sat up. His face was pale, eyes severely swollen, his hair a mess. "Dad, I feel so stupid," he said hoarsely. "Why didn't I see the signs? Why didn't I trust you from the start?" I shook my head. "This isn't your fault. You just trusted the wrong person, and that is not a sin." Rendra looked at me with empty eyes. "But I married her, Dad. Legally, religiously, I became her husband. What do I do now?" It was a heavy question. I took a deep breath before answering. "You have the right to divorce, son. The evidence I have is more than enough for legal proceedings. But for now, the most important thing is you need to get up, shower, eat, and then we'll slowly talk about the next steps." Rendra was silent for a long time, then nodded slowly. On the 4th day, Rendra finally emerged. He showered, changed into clean clothes, and sat at the dining table. I prepared a simple fried rice with a sunny-side-up egg. He ate slowly, each bite requiring immense effort. I sat across from him, not saying much, just keeping him company. After the meal, we sat on the front porch. The morning air in Lembang was cool, a thin mist still shrouding the distant hills. Dad, I'm sorry, Rendra said suddenly, his voice quiet, filled with regret. I told you that you were lonely and didn't want me to be happy. I was wrong. You were just trying to protect me. His tears started to fall again. I looked at my son, a grown man who now looked like a lost boy. I'm not angry, son, I said, patting his shoulder. I'm just sad that you had to go through this pain. But trust me, this will pass. We will start over, together. Rendra hugged me, and for the first time since Bu Sari passed, I felt a long-lost closeness with my son. Loose ends in justice. Meanwhile, Kinanti's fate was grim. From information gathered through Mrs. Nana and some neighbors, she vanished from all social media. All her accounts were closed or deleted. She didn't return to work at the bar. The bar owner even called me to apologize for employing her, though I told him it wasn't his responsibility. A few weeks later, Mrs. Nana texted that Kinanti had been sighted in Garut. She was staying with distant relatives and reportedly didn't dare leave the house. People who knew her in Garut already knew about the events in Bandung, as the story had spread widely. She looks like a ghost, Horace. She's afraid to go outside. Instant karma, Mrs. Nana said in a voice message. I took no pleasure in hearing that. I never wanted to destroy anyone's life. I only wanted to protect Rendra from a bad person. But perhaps this was the consequence of Kinanti's actions. She built her life on lies, and when the lies crumbled, nothing remained. As for Didit and Donnie, they too were victims. According to Parman, who still monitored the area occasionally, Didit returned to focusing on his garage work and tried to move on. Donnie, more private, locked his Instagram account and posted nothing new. From a legal standpoint, Rendra and Kinanti's divorce proceeded quickly due to the overwhelming evidence. The lawyer we consulted said the case was crystal clear and Kinanti would be almost unable to defend herself. Rendra filed for divorce based on adultery and fraud. Kinanti didn't show up for the first hearing, represented by a lawyer who seemed to be going through the motions. In the second hearing, the judge granted Rendra the divorce. Their marriage officially ended just 2 months after the ceremony. Rendra sat next to me when the verdict was read. His face was emotionless. After leaving the court, he sighed deeply. Dad, it feels like a nightmare that's finally over, he said quietly. But I knew that even though it was legally concluded, the emotional wounds would not heal so easily. The path forward. Weeks after the divorce, Rendra was still often lost in thought. Sometimes, I'd find him sitting on the porch late at night, staring blankly at the sky. I didn't force him to talk, just sat beside him, offering silent companionship. Slowly, we began to build a new routine. We prayed together at the small mosque near the house every dawn. After prayers, we'd have congee at a favorite food stall. These simple activities helped Rendra return to a normal life. He started taking freelance work again, though not as much as before. I didn't pressure him. Healing takes time. To truly start a new chapter, I decided to sell the old house in Lembang. It was too big for 2 of us, and contained too many memories that might only burden Rendra. With the proceeds, I bought a smaller house closer to the local market. Simpler, but comfortable enough for us both. During the move, Rendra helped clear things out with a slowly returning enthusiasm. In our new house, we hung Bu Sari's photo in the living room. Beneath the frame, I taped a small, handwritten note, "We are not perfect, but we try." Rendra looked at his mother's photo for a long time, then offered a faint smile. "Mom would be proud of you, Dad," he said softly. Rendra started getting active in online communities that discussed relationship manipulation and toxic relationships. He even anonymously shared his story in one forum and received a flood of support from people who had experienced similar situations. "Dad, it turns out I wasn't alone. So many people have been manipulated like me," he said one evening, showing me his laptop screen. I was happy to see him starting to bounce back and even helping others through his experience. 6 months after the reception incident, our lives were much calmer. Rendra could smile again, although a shadow of sadness sometimes lingered in his eyes. He secured some large design projects and was productive again. One afternoon, my phone rang. A text from an unknown number. It was brief. "Dad, I know I was wrong, but I will change. I'm sorry." No name, but I knew it was Kinanti. I stared at the screen for a long time. Was she truly remorseful, or was this just another way to seek sympathy? I would never know. I typed a short reply. God knows the contents of a human heart. I do not need to know the rest. Then, I blocked the number, not out of hatred, but because I didn't want the past to haunt us. Rendra was healing, and I wouldn't let anything disrupt that process. That night, I sat on the porch of the new house, watching the sunset. The sky was a beautiful orange-red, but it held a hint of melancholy. Rendra was inside on a video call with his new client. I could hear his voice, sounding energetic again, and it warmed my heart. I quietly said to myself, I didn't win, but I didn't lose either. And sometimes, that's enough. Life isn't about winning every battle. It's about protecting the people you love, even if it means making difficult choices that cause you pain. I looked at Bu Sari's photo visible through the living room window. Her face smiled gently in the old wooden frame. Sorry, I did my best. Our son is safe now. He will be okay. We will both be okay. A gentle night breeze carried the scent of frangipani from next door. I smiled faintly, feeling a peace I hadn't felt in a long time. Tomorrow was a new day, and we, Rendra and I, would face it together, as father and son, as a family that had survived the storm and still stood. Perhaps not perfectly. Perhaps still bearing scars that hadn't fully healed. But we were here, we endured, and we would continue to move forward. Because that is what true family does. They don't surrender to the darkness. They look for the light, no matter how small, and walk toward it together.